good to be here, guys. Thanks everybody for coming out. I know the show's been crazy and hectic for everyone, but this is my first talk I've done in a while, and we've been so heads down and busy with our projects that it's fun to kind of step back every once in a while and put your thoughts together and actually make a statement once in a while. Here I have the absolutely lovely slide deck that's like completely horrible pink and purple in the middle of it. So you may have shown up today expecting this lecture to be titled Industry Lessons Learned and Applying Them to the Road Ahead. I was actually grabbing food the other day across the street at the Metreon, and I actually had two random guys sitting behind me reading the title and saying, well, that's about as generic as it can get, and well, to be fair, it is. When I first started working on the talk, I had submitted the abstract months ago, had all these ideas out on the floor, and had no idea how we were going to tie it all together. I was given the spirit guide of Chris Hecker to kind of guide me through the process, because Chris, brilliant guy, great speaker, and we started really kit-bashing on it and working on it, and it really wasn't going to be that generic. We really actually started having a good idea about what it would be all about. And so if I could go back and retitle this title, I would actually title it The Rise of the Power of Creative in Gaming and some pointers on getting there. And I'll walk you through what all that means before I get through the quick slide. I didn't want to have somebody introduce me to anything like that. I'm not that kind of guy. So I come out here. I've been in the industry for a while. I've been at Epic Games since I was 17 years old. I'm 36 now, and I realized that I've officially been at that studio longer than I haven't been at the studio, which is a really freaky moment to kind of hit in your career milestone. So I did Jazz Jackrabbit. I did a couple games before that we're not going to talk about because they really weren't very good. We iterated and found the sweet spot. Did that when I was coming out of high school, out of my mom's house, the classic, print the discs out and mail them off, the dream that everybody wants to have. Did the Unreal franchise for a while there, Unreal Tournament. Did a bunch of those to the point where my brother was joking, what's next, Unreal the fucking musical? And we were like, okay, it's time to maybe make a new IP. And then we did Gears of War, which has done well for us. I'm working on the third iteration. That'll be coming out in September. Fingers crossed, it's going to kick ass. And then also, in the meantime, I've been able to help out with Bulletstorm, which is doing well, working with Donald and the guys on Infinity Blade, as well as Shadow Complex. So having a really, really fun time at Epic, whereas I can dive in deep on a game like Gears, but also get to be the fun uncle on some of the other projects. So again, disclaimer, these are my opinions. Don't quote it as being something that EA or Microsoft or Tim Sweeney or Mark, actually you can quote it as Mark Rain if you want, that would be fine. But don't quote it as, Microsoft or any of our partners. I really love GDC in San Francisco. It's actually 2 years ago, I was wrapping up with the show and I took my badge off because I was going to do an interview over at the Clift. And I threw my badge in the trash and then went off to do the interview and everything and met Alan Willard, my coworker, later for dinner, at which point he handed me my badge. And I look at him, I'm like, what just happened here? And apparently one of San Francisco's homeless had dug around in the trash, had found my badge, had then put the badge on, and then meandered into the convention center. I swear to God. And so what had actually happened was that the security had found this guy and had taken the badge back and then gave it to Ann Dubé, who's our office admin, who then handed it to Alan, who then handed it back to me. And all I can picture is this guy disheveled walking around the convention center with my name badge on, and people are like going, man, crunch time at Epic's got to be a motherfucker. So, disclaimers aside, this is a creative's angle. You hear some buzzwords like freemium and snack gaming and all that fun stuff that people love talking about right now. This is my perspective. You can hear that from a marketing guy, you can hear it from an executive. I'm design director at the studio, I'm a creative, and this is my perspective. So, moving forward, I talked about a power creative. You're going to hear this theme throughout the day. What is a power creative? You've seen some of these guys kind of emerge in film, whereas you have your Peter Jacksons, you have your Spielbergs, you see J.K. Rowling in literature, these people who can essentially call the shots once they get to a certain point in their career. They're people who are visible. They're not afraid to hide themselves and put themselves out there. They're unique, they're valuable, they're people who often have kind of a multifaceted set of skills, ranging from creative all the way through to business. And I mean, this doesn't have to be, I came from a level design and game design background. This could be anyone. It could be a coder, it could be a producer, anybody evolving into that role. But if you follow some of the tips that I'm hopefully giving you, you can start heading down that path to be a bit more of a power creative and actually start calling the shots for yourself in the business. So here's the outline we're going to keep coming back to. Little Crimson Omen plug right there. I'm going to start off with some probably obvious tips, some things that some of you who are industry veterans will be like, duh. Some of you who are new, this might seem new and interesting, but these are things we often forget. Any creative can forget this stuff. The first thing is to assess yourself, to know your weaknesses. This is huge. I find that myself as a creative, I'm not a spreadsheet designer, I'm a holistic designer, I have to get in there and feel around and pan for gold. I realized this a long time ago, and then find complementary talent that works with you. Find the yin to your yang. On the right, you see Kirk and Spock, you see Eddie Van Halen and David Lee Roth. These are people who work together. David Lee Roth, the charismatic, crazy frontman, brings the rock and roll to the rock and roll, and the musician writes the musician, he supports that. You get those two working together, and that's gold. And that's not gonna happen unless you have mutual respect. The people that I work with in our studio, we don't have any sort of weird political leanings right there about climbing some sort of corporate ladder. So if I propose an idea and one of my leads looks at me, he's like, dude, that's horrible. I'm gonna be like, yeah, you're right. It was a really horrible idea. But then again, it comes back to selling, which I'll get to in a second. If I left Epic tomorrow and I started over, if somebody said, hey, here's $1 billion, make whatever game you'd want, I'd be like, I don't want that absolute control because that just leads to madness. What happens sometimes with the power creative also is they get a certain amount of success and nobody edits them anymore. You look at how the Harry Potter books started going like this and this and this as it started to become a success. Peter Jackson's amazing, but King Kong was a really long movie because nobody was willing to say, hey, can we cut a little bit of this out right here in the middle? And you kind of want that system of checks and balances. And that's why I love Epic, because no matter how many interviews I get to do, no matter how much I get to be out there, there's always somebody willing to give me shit at the office and shrink my head, which is a very useful thing to have. Sometimes too much. So, you can't do it all. You're gonna hear me repeating that, although you want to be out there and be a power creative, this is a team effort. You need to know when to let go. You need to know when to delegate. This is one thing working with the creatives on our team when they try and do it all, and it's like, dude, be willing to say, hey, can I get some help here? I really can't do this all myself. There was a time in Gears 1 where I was struggling with some of the initial AI design as far as planning out what the AI was going to do, if they were going to rush you from cover, if they're going to try and flank you and things like that, and I realized, like, I'm not the best guy for starting this right now. And then at that point, that responsibility was taken from me to a small cabal that then iterated on that, and I was able to get that initial iteration and start polishing it to make it something cool and fun, and that's an essential ability that you need to have. Find left and right brain types that complement each other. Rod Ferguson on Gears is very much that person, and this is one of those things as I was putting this talk together and I'm looking over the course of my career, there's always been that one person there who's like, the person that grounds me, the person that says, dude, you can't have 15,000 guns, it's just not doable. Or the conservative programmer who's like, really, you want to try what? Are you crazy? We only have 2 years to build this game. On Jazz Jackrabbit, that was Ariane Broussais, the programmer. On the Unreal Tournament franchise, that was Steve Polge. Very different personalities. I remember going to a press junket, and he's reading The Economist on the plane, and I'm reading The Source magazine. I mean, you want that kind of contrast. And again, on Gears, it's been Rod Ferguson who's been the yin to my yang. You need that. Second thing is, and this might be happening in the business, but I don't see it, and if I'm not seeing it, I'm not hearing enough about it. Make your product personal. I mean, this is an art form. I'm not even having that fucking debate. Like, this is art, so can we just stop that? I'm not even going there. There's not enough of it, and I remember being a child and reading about Miyamoto being inspired about exploring caves and how that inspired some of his explorations for Zelda. I was like 13 and I found that to be amazing. And there's just not enough of it going to the games and we're not hearing enough about it. I mean, if you look at Gears, you can tell that I'm a child of the 80s. I was raised with Transformers, He-Man, G.I. Joe. I was 13 years old and I saw Predator, which melted my face, but it had a significant influence on me. I mean, it's the classic American mentality, right? You know, you can show your 12-year-old or 13-year-old son all the violence in the world, but if there's one boob, we have to throw a coat over their head, which never makes any sense to me. So, Gears 1 also, speaking of it being personal, I was actually going through a very tough time when we were doing the first game. I was going through actually a divorce, and it was a very difficult personal time on me. But somehow through that, some kind of creative magic can come out. One time I was fortunate enough to have a meeting with Joss Whedon, and we were talking about Buffy and how Buffy was so amazing, and he said to me, Buffy suffer, show good. And I'm like, that's actually a good point, because that was how the show would actually work. And for creatives, sometimes that's the best. There's a reason why Marcus has daddy issues in Gears of War 3. I personally lost my dad when I was 15 years old. Rod Ferguson, the executive producer, lost his parents, Lee Perry as well. And we all sat together one day and we're like, holy shit, like this actually is why it's in the game. And that's cool, and that actually is interesting. And so press, feel free to ask once in a while. I mean, some of the best interviews I've ever had are ones where we're not going, what are the new weapons that are in your game? How many levels? What's the new features in the Unreal Engine? Because you're just going to get us spouting the same thing we said to the 15 other guys. Come in and talk about, what it was like to grow up in New England and how that influenced you, or, what do you value in family, or what's your favorite music, or what book have you read lately? And that sometimes yields an interesting insight into how the power of creative mind actually works. So, I hate this photo of myself. I was from OXM a couple years ago. I put myself out there and then I complain when people complain about me on the internet, but I just want to punch myself in the face there. Design is sales sometimes. It's one part creativity, one part inspiration, one part hard work, but it's also fucking sales. You need to convince people that your idea is good. And Mike Capps likes to say the authority stick gets shorter every time you use it. It's that whole like beating somebody and saying, use my idea, listen to my idea. It's not at all like parenting. I'm not a parent, but what I know of talking to parents is you have to convince a child. Now, Billy, if you do your homework, you're gonna get a cookie. And he's like, wow, I suddenly had the idea that I should do my homework. This is a good idea. Sometimes it's like being a lawyer. If you can't convince your programmer that the idea is good, do a rip-o-matic of various scenes from a movie that you think is interesting and send it over to him and be like, oh yeah, I can see how that works now. These are the tools you have to use, convincing people and kind of getting to this chain of excitement. This is another term that I love coining, the cliffisms we like to call them. If I can't get my peers in a meeting excited about an idea, bounding into their office saying, oh my God, we need this gun that shoots goo and it's gonna explode and be great. If I can't do that, how am I gonna get the publishers excited when I'm sitting there in front of Microsoft and I have a PowerPoint and I'm like, yeah, no, this game's gonna be great, chainsaw guns, kids love that shit, right? If I can't sell them, I can't sell the press. When I sit down and I go to a press junket and it's like speed dating, right? Just one after another. If I can't maintain that level of excitement, shout out to sugar-free Red Bull, then I'm not gonna be able to get the fans excited. So it's that chain of excitement that trickles down. Always remember, you are selling. So that's segue into the value of PR and marketing, which are dangerous words. A power creative gets the value of PR and marketing. Those of you who I've worked with know I enjoy doing this stuff. I get a kick out of it. I see it as a fun challenge. PR used to be one of those things that was like nice. Oh, we have a developer who likes to do on-camera stuff. Holy shit, let's use him. He's great. We'll put him out there, cart him out. You need it now. This is an increasingly distracted world. I'll go into that in a little bit, but you need to be able to figure out how to put yourself out there. When I was in school and I was in high school, I was working on my games, and my problem was I was never cool enough for the cool kids. I didn't want to go get fucked up after prom, right? But I didn't want to go in the basement and play D&D either. I was like never cool enough for the cool kids, but never geeky enough for the geeks. And somehow that's actually become a very valuable asset for me. So there's something to keep in mind there, that you need to almost be a chameleon as you evolve into a power creative. You need to interact and work with a variety of personalities. You need to be able to sit down with a hardcore coder and talk about how you just think the diffuse maps on that rendering demo look great. You need to sit down with a hippie artist and talk about how you think Jim Lee is a god and how Brahm is amazing. You need to sit down with the marketing guy, take him to dinner, get him drunk, and have fun with him. You need to be able to go between all of those circles, and that will help you kind of evolve, and everybody will get to know you, and then eventually you'll just be visible. So takeaway here is, do not be afraid to be public with yourself. So why don't developers do PR more? Reason one, we're all fucking assholes. It's true. You guys in this room are cool. It's the other people on the internet that are, you guys are fine. Thanks for showing up. I have a metagame of reading comments on forums, all right? It's actually highly amusing. A couple of quotes I found within about 30 seconds of going to YouTube or various forums. The first one is, yep, Cliffy B maintains the undisputed title of being the world's biggest douchebag, at least in the game developers world. I'm like, oh good, I'm not competing with Jersey Shore, this is good. Cliffy B is a moron who lies for money. He is not cool and don't believe a word he says. Douchebag alert, which is a trend here. This is worse, by the way, if you happen to be a female. Those of you who know Bulletstorm might know Tanya Jessen. She's our ninja awesome producer, brilliant girl, helped ship that product. It's really kicks ass, right? Happens to be attractive. So what do the gamers assume? That she like hooked up with everybody to get her job or something like that. Her quotes are even better. I wanted to save you a few of the bad ones because I want to keep this semi-PG-13 because there were some really bad ones there. Why is this hot chick producing a video game? Get back in the kitchen and make me a sex tape, bitch. Yeah. The question is not how did she get out of my kitchen, it's how did she get up out of my basement, which then on YouTube had 62 thumbs up. Thankfully, we have thick skin. I have thick skin, Tanya has thick skin, and what can ultimately happen is that becomes fuel for the fire. That can actually motivate you. You're like, really? Oh, what are you gonna say now, huh? And I would rather be loved and hated than ignored, right? And the fact that there's an article on Kotaku with 400 comments about people flaming back and forth is actually useful. And I realized at a young age, coming from a drama nerd background, that this is your insurance policy. If Tim Sweeney wakes up tomorrow and he's like, God, I really hate Cliff and I'm really done with him, I could probably go to a lot of studios, a lot of places around there and get a job or get a deal or get a really sweet gig because people know who the hell I am because I wasn't afraid to put myself out there. The second reason why developers aren't out there more is because most publishers don't want it. You are a cog in the machine, excuse the pun, you are a doozer. Those of you who watched Fraggle Rock as a kid, and those of you who remember it, these were these guys who all looked alike, and they were just happy to go to work, and a lot of people are just fucking happy to work in games. But put yourself out there. Think about this. Until you put yourself out there as a person, you can then become a brand, and then you're known. I'm not the best game designer in the world. I surround myself with people that compliment me, but people know me, and that's valuable in this day and age, especially in the noisy internet world. And you say, but I'm a nerd, right? And I'm like, really? 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 Like, this is a world where the nerds have taken over. It's a funny thing about white culture. White culture, typically in America, doesn't have a lot of culture, so they kind of have to hijack culture. You know, there's a while there it was, you know, the kids were having this pants sag low and like, look, I'm urban, right? They just hijacked, you know, urban culture. And then there's a while where it was all metrosexual. Well, they hijacked gay culture. Well, guess what? Nerd culture's been jacked, guys, and it's okay to put yourselves out there. And there's no bigger evidence of this than all the fucking hipsters out there. It is an absolute race to the bottom to see who can look like the biggest, dweebiest music nerd, film nerd, whatever. This nerd, Patton Oswalt did an article about this a while ago. I believe it was in Wired. You might want to look it up. It's highly amusing. But this hipster zombie apocalypse is nerd taking over. They smell funny, too. So, that said, here's the catch. Make no mistake. If you're fortunate enough to do the PR, and you're fortunate enough to put yourself out there and become a brand, you better not forget that fucking team that you work with. You are forming a band here, and you are the front man. You don't want some Metallica, some kind of monster Discord going on there. If you are the face of the company, you need to stay humble. And the biggest tip that I've found, if you go up and look up YouTube or Game Trailers videos of me, the majority of the time, I say we. What we believe at Epic, what we believe as a company. I'm never sitting there going, well, in my game, what I believe this should be. Because it's not just my game, it's the team's game. I'm fortunate enough to be a lead creative, hopefully evolving into a power creative. We'll see how the next few years go. And then keep in mind, if you are fortunate enough to become visible and you meet a fan and they stop you and they say, hey, what's up? You shake their hand and you look them in the eye and you thank them because they're the reason you can eat. They're the reason why you have this amazing job in the first place. And you never know, someday they might wind up working with you. So I Google image search for this, you know, me and Cliffy, and found all these photos. And no offense, I don't remember taking any of them, but they were all awesome people and they're amazing. And it even gets crazier when we start getting into the tattoos in a minute. So I want to throw this out here. Like, I was stoked to meet Notch the other day because he's a fucking rock star. The hat is a brilliant idea on his behalf as far as branding too, by the way. I swear I'm going to steal it. I know who John Blow and Notch are, and I think that's great. I have never, in my damn near 20-year career, ever met a single Rockstar employee. I have nothing but respect for the Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead games, but isn't that weird? I've met Take-Two people. I've met former employees, but I've never met one. So if any of you are out there, please, I'd love to meet you because Red Dead was fantastic, and I just throwing that out there. It's a little strange. I want to talk about marketing. People say marketing, you assume, hey, marketing douchebag, you know, it doesn't really matter, you just figure out what it is. Few devs participate in this, maybe they don't like it. I have a blast with it, I think it's fun. The publishers will often shield the developer away from the marketing process. Yeah, just slip the game under the door, or the marketing guys will figure it out, we'll be good. This is your baby. You need to have a vested interest in how it's represented. These are two recent examples, well, not fairly recent, it's a few years back. Deus Ex 2, Invisible War. I'm looking at JC, and he looks like this Vin Diesel, Jersey Shore, gangsta-style guy. That's not what Deus Ex is all about. And thankfully, it looks like the guys who are doing Human Revolution really get it. I've seen some of the preliminary visual ID. It's like, yes, that's what you're doing. This should be Deus Ex. Condemned 2 is my favorite example of this, because this is one of the worst box arts I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, is this like a glory hole simulator? Like, what is going on here? like, is there like a Republican senator in there or something? Like, what is going on? So as the key holder to the game and the IP, lift up and look around and pay attention to this stuff. Guy Welch, who's our marketing manager at Microsoft, sends along these slide decks about what they're doing with marketing, and the PR guys send things along. And we sit there, and I will go from playtesting the game and suggesting that a gun's a little stronger, or maybe we tweak this melee, or having design meetings, to going back to my desk and reviewing the logo for the game, going over the visual ID, going over what the box design is going to be, the copy on the back. We're agonizing with EA to make sure that the few screenshots you have represent Bulletstorm well. This is stuff you should participate in. TV ads, we go through the storyboards with everybody. We were looking at the Mad World edits before it was even rendered out, and because this is our vested interest, this is our baby, you need to take care of it. Viral campaigns, I was in the room with Whedon and Kennedy when they proposed duty calls. Did you guys happen to see that? Raise your hand if you saw duty calls. Which Mark Rain didn't want to do, by the way, I just want to throw that out there. And I was like, no, we need to do this. And I was able to suggest to them, the war never changes, does war change? Because of Jeff Gertzman from Giant Bomb had tweeted that, and I was like, that's totally true. Nobody ever knows in video games, does war change or does it not? I don't know. And that was like the opening joke, and it turned out great because we were able to participate as creatives. So, if you're going to be a power creative, You need to understand your audience and how this audience is continuing to shift beneath our feet. A lot of great things going on in mobile and social. I play Cityville. The first thing you have to understand is the shifting mind of your consumer right now. There's a book by Nicholas Carr I'd recommend called The Shallows, where he's trying to make the case that our brains are shifting to this kind of leap around. We're never really getting deep on anything. We're just kind of flittering around from different website to website, and this is changing how we think. I'm not going to make the case for or against that. The bottom line is that's how people operate these days. We have this generation that I'm going the Apple route. I'm going to call it the iGen. These are people that want to interact. And when did this really start? Did this start with video games? I actually don't think that's the case. I think it started really with the remote control. Because what happened was usually, when you're sitting there in your shag carpet, it was a child of the 80s, it was staying around from the 70s, and I have the TV across the room, and I have to go change the channel. That's a lot of work. You're like, I gotta crawl across here, and then your mom's yelling at you for turning the knob too fast, which most of us had. Once the remote happened, I'm the one in control. I'm the one modifying. I'm the one interacting. And from there on out, it's all just gotten crazier. So what we have is a mind that isn't happy doing one thing at a time. We have what we call the multitasking mind. So I'm just saying, a one-track mind is just dead. Rest in peace. So a recent example, I just Google image search, CNN headline news. Like, what's going on here? Like it's not enough to just look at the pleasant news anchor telling us about what's going on in Egypt or something. We have 3 tickers on the bottom of the screen. There's like, coming up on the right, here's all sorts of other shit and objectives, and there's a fire, and I need to know the time and that it's Eastern, because I clearly don't know where I am right now. And what is this turning into? This is idiocracy. This is Ow My Balls with all the ads on the side. Which I would watch that show, to be fair. So everybody always assumes, oh, it's just the kids, kids, they're texting. No, dude, I'm 36. I do this all the time. It's everyone who's born now all the way up to damn near 40. And I'm watching the Super Bowl, and I'm watching the ads, I'm paying attention to the game, but I'm somehow able to tweet the damn thing at the same time because I have a multitasking mind. CNN, just the other day in the morning, you texted to us, we'll air it. American Idol, the interactive generation, right? So a lot of you, I hope I'm entertaining you, but we're all addicted to social networking, social media, everything. You feel that pull in your pocket right now. You know somebody might be messaging you. You want to check your email. You want to check your Facebook and your Twitter because you see what's going on, right? I feel it all the time. I could be at a dinner with the most amazing, brilliant people in the world, but I still want to be like, do the peel away, right? And this goes back to the Onion article that I love, where it says 90% of waking hours spent staring at glowing rectangles. It's funny because it's fucking true. The second you get up, check it. I love this guy because he's like checking his phone while he has his laptop in front of him while he's watching Fallon or Kimmel, or whichever one that people confuse. And I remember sitting there, and I was working on this article, and I was checking my Twitter feed while I had my PowerPoint in front of me, while watching my girlfriend play Assassin's Creed Brotherhood at the same time, and I was still bored. Like, what is going on here? And then those of you in the industry know Jeff Keighley. Love the guy. He and I have basically grown up in this business together. And it's become a joke with Jeff and his BlackBerry. Jeff will sit there with one BlackBerry, shit, 2. He's like in stereo, like messaging people, right? And you'll look at him, you're like, are you hearing a word I'm saying, Jeff? I was just telling you about the next generation of graphics. And he'll look up at you and he will recite to a T everything you said, because he heard what you said. And he actually processed it. He wasn't being rude. And that's the mind that we're dealing with. Remember, he's 36, 37. So as a creative, as a designer, evolving into a power creative, how do you adjust? First and foremost, you build an IP, an intellectual property that is friendly and open to it. I'll never forget when I was in Barcelona and I saw the Assassin's Creed demo and they saw like the Animus thing coming off. I was like, oh, you just ruined it, dude. Like, really? I'm like in the Matrix, woo, right? And as time went on and as that franchise did well, I thought, that's genius. Because what they can do is they can have an infinite amount of genetic memories across an infinite amount of time periods, and then, and this is the key, they could tie it into the real world. They have a little Facebook game where you're part of this conspiracy using high-tech stuff. They can start having high-tech things that possibly happen in the real world. That decision was a very smart, forthright decision on behalf of Ubisoft to really make a smart IP. I believe that split screen isn't just 2 viewports anymore. It's multiple rendering views. I want to sit there on my sofa as I'm playing Dead Space 2 and have somebody take their iPad and hack a door for me. Like, get off Twitter, just hack this door, just hack it for me, right? Because that's the world we live in now. I want everything talking to everything else across all of these devices. I mean, even co-op, asynchronous co-op, Demon's Souls was ahead of its time. What if I have an existing world where I can hide stuff from my friends and then send notifications to them and they come in and they find it? The current way we usually play multiplayer games online is like going to a pub and hoping you run into everybody. Like, we need better ways to plan this kind of stuff. And ultimately, this will lead towards the game always being with you. So it's not just you sitting on your sofa, it's not just you on your mobile, it's you playing the game at home, and then maybe you go out and you're still getting messages from your friends. All right, I gotta solve this puzzle for Frank so we both get 25 XP. That's where it's going, and the person who gets there first will win big. So how do you get and keep this iGen? You need to be surgical and devious with them. I hate to say it. You only have a certain amount of time to keep these people's attention span because they're going to be on to the next thing. In Gears, we have a calendar right now. It's a way of saying, hey, don't trade in your game because Ticker Tuesday is coming up and you're not going to want to miss that. This is something that Blizzard knew with WoW and a lot of these other games knew for years that are making their way into the shooter market. The other thing is if you play the game and you continue to play online and have multiple matches, you get consecutive XP bonuses. Do whatever you can to keep them in the game so that eventually the sun comes up and they're like, damn it, I got to go to work in 5 minutes. This is horrible. This game got me again. Reward early, often and long term, the badges, all that. I don't want to drill too down into that because that's something that's just a no-brainer in this day and age to kind of keep people, hey, you get a cookie, you get a star, a title you can unlock. Trick pricing and time commitment. If you were to tell me that I would sit down with my iPad and I'd play 2 hours of Angry Birds and be like, just get the fuck out of here, really? Like, I'm going to say, right? I'll play 5 minutes, and then suddenly 2 hours go by, and I'm like, damn it, right? Like, that's how it is with box sets of DVDs. Like, if I know a movie's 3 hours for me to actually go to the theater and see that, I'm like, all right, I can deal with 2 hours. 3 is a bit much. I'm kind of busy. I got stuff to do. But if you give me the box set of Dexter, suddenly you're 6 episodes in, 6 hours in, you're like, what happened, right? That kind of little trick model is where a lot of this comes from. A little freemium, and freemium's great also, touching upon that. Classic term that's big right now, because we have a cautious consumer society. I'll talk about that in a little bit. People are scared to spend $60 right now, but they'll play it for free, and before you know it, they're in for $120 that they wouldn't have spent initially, because they, just try it. Get some Smurf berries. You'll like it. I stole this slide from Tim Sweeney, and I neglected to adjust the colors to the pink of the slides. This was 2002. Not bad. Manageable. It's 2012. Like, think about this for a second. Let's let that slide breathe. What is going on right now with all of these platforms and their iPad 2's announced, NGP, all this? It's the fucking wild, wild west again. And as a creative and as a business person, it should scare you. So that would lead into the future and building IP for it. A power creative anticipates the future and builds this world to suit. AAA is not dying. I'm so tired of hearing that. Like, just because Jersey Shore is big doesn't mean people don't want Avatar and The Dark Knight and Inception, and I think Battle LA looks pretty cool, right? People still want those experiences. Just because a new section of the market opens up, fair enough, go. You can go make social and mobile. That's awesome. Doesn't mean a previous part vanishes. Broadway continues to have banner years when people thought film and television would kill live theater. Keep that in mind. And if you want to survive in AAA, not Alcoholics Anonymous, you need to make gamers marry your game and not just date it. You look at WoW as an MMO, like you have people who just play WoW. What do you play? I just play WoW. Like, wow, it's crazy. You want a campaign for a game, but you need a deep multiplayer, like Halo, Gears, COD. Massively single-player game is a term we've been using around the office. That's what Fallout is. Now they have multiplayer. Red Dead has it now, right? Learn from social. See some of the tricks that they're using there to find and keep gamers. Are they going to be hybrids? We're going to see gifting now in a future Gears or Red Dead? Who knows, right? These are other ways to keep people talking about your game and keeping them interactive in an asynchronous manner. Now, I'm going to go on the record here and say that I believe that the middle-class game is dead. I'll explain that in a second, but Lou Dobbs was always on CNN and had his book, The Shrinking Middle Class. Well, I'm going to apply that term to video games and movies in a second here. Right now, we have the boogeyman of used and rentals. I went to Best Buy to pick up Killzone. I was hoping Gorilla would hook me up with a copy, but I had to go get it. That's cool. I walk outside, game trade-in, Best Buy now. It's hit the big box retail, people. This is scary shit. My movie rule, personally, I have a feeling a lot of you feel the same way. It needs to either be an event movie, like Day One, company field trip, Battlefield Los Angeles looks awesome, we're there. Avatar, we're there. The other guys with Will Ferrell and Marky Mark, yeah, I'll fucking rent that, I don't really care, right? Or an indie film. Black Swan, I will go see that. I'll go to the Rialto or I'll go to the AAA IMAX movie. The middle one is just gone, and I think the same things happen to games. You have this, if you have a 7-hour game that's maybe just Melee only and that's it, boom, done. So we have a cautious consumer. Google that. There's so many articles about this right now. People are still smarting from the recession. People don't go into Target anymore and spend $200 just randomly like Target would trick you into doing. They're like, okay, I got $80 and I need 4 things. Let's do this. We're out of here. They're surgical now. And if you are on a forum and your game's being hyped and you see terms like Day One rental, campaign rental, Redbox, GoozeX, Gamefly, pack it in because your game's not going to sell. So what else can we do as an industry, as creatives that's evolving into these power creatives I keep speaking of? The pipe. When Gabe Newell years ago at GDC was like, hey, we got this thing called Steam, we're like, oh, okay, that'll be cool. Yeah, look at it now, right? Who's laughing now, right? And me personally, I only go to the store now for clothing and for food. Everything else is either Amazon or streamed. And I really think it's eventually going to start going that way everywhere. So let me ask Microsoft, Sony, everybody, can I have a fully connected console now? Because that's what mobile's been, is a fully connected console. Your competition now for understanding your customers, it's all this now. It's not just games anymore. And you need to tap into this feed. The world is addicted to this feed. First thing we do in the morning is check the feed. I know about celebrities dying from the feed more than I know from CNN. The red ring I'll explain in just a second. Have real-world games. High-level example. Put stickers around the world that have those little UPC-type things that you can scan with your phone that tie into your game to encourage your fans to put them and hide them around the world like Shepard Fairey Obey style. And then that could give you points in your game, and then you could give points to friends, right? All sorts of things like that. Have an in-world Twitter feed with a hashtag. Have, build your fiction to support this. You don't want this in like a Western game. Build something in the modern world, right, where you can be in an area with news, and there's the news ticker like at Times Square that reads in hashtags, so you're not pulling your phone out and checking that particular hashtag about the game, right? Red Dead, viral videos. Everyone loves virals. We all sit there watching cats fart on YouTube and things like that. That's fine. You need to figure out how to tap into that. And I'm going to go out on the limb here and believe that when Red Dead came out, raise your hand if you know the Donkey Lady. You guys know what I'm talking about? How many people have actually found the Donkey Lady? Very few, if any. I've never met anybody who's found the Donkey Lady. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, maybe there's somebody smart at Rockstar or who's actually putting these videos out there. Maybe they even left the bug in there so that you get a kid in his dorm, he's like, oh my God, look at the Donkey Lady. And his friend comes up, he's like, dude, what are you watching? Like, what is it? And he's like, you haven't seen this? Oh, it's crazy. What game is that from? Let me show you. What can you put in your game? Easter eggs. And that's why the red ring is there, because the second day after Bulletstorm came out, front page of Kotaku, all these websites, Red Ring of Death Secret, that is your hidden X factor in extending your long tail of your game. So I'm running into our office with the LDs, and I'm like, dude, Easter eggs, pack them in, pack them deep, clear them through legal, because we know that could be a very bad thing if it changes your game from M to adults only, as we all know, and pack it in there, because it's going to take them months, if years, to find the stuff we put in Gears 3, which I'm pretty excited about. And if they don't find it, we'll leak it. And then free news, hey, your game's still out there. The power of creative builds IP. It's difficult, it's hard, I will admit it. It's really something that takes a lot of iteration and a lot of time and a lot of effort, but this is the fastest track to get to a power creative, is to build an IP. Draw from your favorite sources, like I said, your childhood, and always listen to your peers. You need to build a world to just immerse yourself in, a world to attract Uber fans, either in the play space, the giant world of what WoW is, or outside of that, or both. You look at Gears as the books, the comic books, all these crazy stuff that people want to collect, and they want to dive into the fiction and become these emissaries of the franchise. It's like, well, actually, the real reason Marcus Phoenix got his scar was in page 42 of Jacinto's Remnant. Duh, you don't know that. And they're like, man, how does that guy know? And he's out there selling the game for you. He's an evangelist. And Dragon Age 2, the nerd rage over Felicia Day being cast as this elf, that's churn, that's hits, that's IP acknowledgement, people knowing it. Engage them and keep them. Look at these guys at Comic-Con and everything like that. They put a lot of work into this stuff, right? Interact with them on Twitter, Facebook, everywhere. Post in your forums, because community is the key. That's something, again, I love Blizzard, because they knew that years ago. So how do you build that world? Because most IPs fail. I believe the stats that I read, our friends over at one of our publishing partners told me that it's about 1 or 2% of games that are new IPs sold over 1 million this console generation, which is pretty scary. Keep in mind, often the best ideas start as a joke. We're sitting there watching the Terry Tate office linebacker videos, and we're like, yeah, wouldn't it be good fun to go to war with that guy? Let's do it. And that worked, and we have like a memorable character that people can quote. Name stuff. Things get sticky when you name them. Suddenly it's like, in Unreal 1, we had this lizard thing, and I'm like, oh, let's just call it a scar. And suddenly I was like, yeah, I was playing with the scar the other day, and it's like, oh, I guess people pick up on that. It's simple, but it works. I think we need to get to the point where if you're dealing with your peers and you're making a new IP, you need to get to a quick pitch. Fuck the elevator pitch. Resident Kill Switch was Gears. Can you do it in like 140 characters or less? You have to, because that's the world we live in now. Sometimes a good idea is how easy is it to make fun of something, right? When we were naming Wingman in Gears, which is 2 versus 2 versus 2 versus 2, Ray Davis, who was the lead programmer at the time, was like, don't die on me, Goose, and things like that. And we're like, dude, that's good. You want that. And so you get to the point where two guys are in a match, and one guy takes their grenade, and you're like, my wingman took their grenade, right? So, Coltrane as well. And remember, execution can make a name cool. If you told me Halo, I'd be like, really? Is this like the Dave Perry baby game? No, actually, Bungie made that name cool. We're in a branded world, and I'm wondering, was Prince ahead of his time? We got here through capitalism, rampant capitalism, to be fair. We live in a cluttered world, a world filled with so many different things, and if a person gets burnt on a $60 game, they're going to stick to the brand that they know. And plus, most people hit 30, they stop learning new shit. They're like, I'm good, I like REO Speedwagon, I like Applebee's, don't put any of your new stuff on me, I don't want to eat sushi. So back to the IP, ask yourself, what tattoos would you people get? What quotes can people cite about your IP? What could be an internet meme? And I was in Australia, and I was getting a tour from my guide who said the Sydney Opera House offended people when it was built. They felt it looked like a bunch of sailboats having an orgy or something. Now it's the most iconic building in the nation. Some Gears tattoos there. Just Google image it. Not just the Crimson Omen, the Lancer, Carmine, the Berserker, all of this. Ask yourself about your IP. What would people get tattooed in their body? The best features are often the trifecta ones. They're the rarest, most valuable. They benefit gameplay, they reinforce fiction, and they show off the engine. Us as a middleware provider, that's very important. The Lambent Locust, the drudges you can see on the right, they mutate in random ways. You never know what's going to happen. It's interesting gameplay-wise. It shows off the vertex animation of the characters, right? And then they explode in your face and shows off the updated particle system, and they benefit the fiction. That's a perfect example of that. Furthermore, in IP, I have this thing I like to call the 10-year rule. If you're targeting a young audience, you can take something that they don't know and introduce it to them again, and it's brand new to them. I mean, all these Twihard kids don't know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. They don't know Interview with the Vampire. Hell, they don't know Nosferatu, right? Like, so you can take something that's old, introduce it as new, and you'll be good. Stay mysterious. You don't have to answer everything. Lost was built on this. Have a cameo of a character. Boba Fett. Who the hell was that guy? He looked awesome. Allude to a new location. What is Zion? I want to see Zion. Even if you don't follow up with it, it expands your universe, keeps people interested, and don't forget that narrative and context matter. Transformers was just a Diaclone toy in Japan. Suddenly, when they brought it to the States, it's the heroic Optimus Prime and the evil Megatron, and as a kid, I'm hooked. M&M's, for example, is a staple candy. Suddenly, they introduced the faces and the characters. There's a 4-story store in Times Square. People buying mugs with this stuff. So, understanding the business, running a little snug on time, so I'm going to just step it up a little bit. This is a business. You may get into games because you love games, but keep in mind, there's a reason the lights stay on, and that's because of the flow of money. It's a for-profit business. It can be a confusing business. You need to learn it and study it and understand it. If you're a creative, those who understand money are more than happy to take that money away from you. This happened in the music industry. It's like, yeah, man, I got a record deal. I don't read that shit in that deal that I signed. I'm just going to get stoned and make music. Well, congratulations. Now you owe the record company money after you spent all the money that was front-loaded and spent on PR, marketing, and all of your people and all of that. You don't want to be in that situation. Couple quick things I need to get off my chest. Quit bragging about the number of bodies or studios you put in a project. That's just your way of saying, damn, we're in the red and we hate money. This is great. We put so many people on there. Figure out a way to be more efficient. And pre-orders as a sales metric need to fucking go. I'm done with this. We're no longer in a world where you can't find a game. Like, okay, maybe GameStop will sell it once in a while. You just go to Target or Walmart, or like Amazon day one. Like, this is no longer the era of the gold cartridges and the chip shortages. Find a new aggregate of YouTube comments, of news stories, of hits, and let's use that. This is a business that's filled with rear window decisions. Here's one was the perfect storm of failure. It shouldn't have worked. Don't underestimate the heart of developers who believe in your project. I'll go back to Pixar. If we're not a little nervous, we're not doing our jobs. The Sims, Will Wright had to convince EA to do that. WALL-E. How many movies about lovable sentient robots were popular before WALL-E? Fucking Short Circuit? Really? Somebody would have, like, in the traditional Hollywood machine, would have squashed that. For twin-stick first-person shooters before Halo on console, maybe GoldenEye, that was it. Avatar as well, blue-skinned aliens looking like Fern Gully. Who'd have thought, right? The power creators believed in that, they pushed it through, and it wound up happening. And no statement offends me more than, well, traditionally in this genre, that just stagnates innovation. It kills everything. So don't be rearward thinking, count on your creative people, value people over process and these key visionaries. So what else is valuable besides people? The IP. I've talked to developers like, yeah, we don't own our IP, I don't really care. Are you fucking high? That's the most valuable thing imaginable. If you do a good job with your IP and you get a person who grew up with it and he introduces it to his kid and you don't screw it up, you have what could be a forever IP. Mario, we're going to be seeing Mario forever. Spider-Man, you see 4-year-olds in Spider-Man, we're going to be seeing Spider-Man movies for the next 5,000 years. Master Chief, if 343 knocks it out the park, is going to make that leap because you have a 36-year-old guy who played Halo years ago and has a kid, he'll introduce him to it. The rubber stamp, this is crucial, the mold, the formula. In the restaurant business, you own a restaurant, you hire a chef, you own his formula. If you don't like him, later, I'm going to get a new chef. Maybe almost as good. Customer doesn't know. Customer only knows the restaurant name. Doesn't know the chef name. It's all good. Customer's none the wiser. Publisher thanks. I have a rubber stamp. Stamp, 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 stamp. Stamp no working no more. Need new stamp, right? And that's the pattern that's been happening in the business. And then where's the new stamp? These are our forgers, our power creatives, our chefs. They're undervalued and they are rare. They're the people who can blend fiction, gameplay, world, and polish, and incite a team to make kick-ass stuff and work with them creatively. So you gotta wonder how it feels to lovingly craft a world and a mechanic, to spend thousands of hours on it, not own it, move on to something else, and then see it melt, see money made for shareholders, and you don't get a dime. Own your IP whenever possible, and Epic does, yay. Often it's the independent and medium-sized developers who can do this because they have the time and the creativity to pan for gold, to find that incubation. There's less bullshit to deal with. It seldom happens at the big studios. I want to give a shout out to the guys who did Connect, the guys also at Visceral who did Dead Space 2 because they managed to pull this off. It doesn't happen that often. People drown in politics, there's committees, there's size and analysis paralysis, and again, rear window thinking, traditionally this genre. The final reason this stamp and this innovation doesn't happen that often at big publishers, from talking to so many I know, more often than not, if you put your neck out, you get your head cut off. Sadly enough, I put a turkey in there. It's not all negative though. I think great things can happen when you take that risk, and that's what so many of these IPs and these movies and these properties I've talked about today came from, these power creatives. So you can evolve into it, put yourself out there, have an educated gut, build smart, deep, and connected IP as we move forward, remembering that PR and branding can set you free, but only if you have a business backbone and an understanding of the business. Someday soon, maybe, we'll see the power creative rise and become more of a staple than ever in the gaming industry. Thanks. Couple quick things. Be sure to fill out your evaluation. Hopefully you liked it. I'd love it if you loved it. I'd love to speak again. I like doing this stuff. And we have time for some Q&A. I don't know how we are on the time as far as... We got a few? Couple questions? Okay.
Yeah, you have time.
Got it. I need to have swag for the first person. Oh, come on. I said a mouthful there.
All right. I'll step up.
Thanks, man.
All right. This is Dennis Crow from... Oh, wow, it's loud. This is Dennis Crow from Blizzard. When did you decide that you wanted to become a power creative?
I wasn't popular. The question is when did I decide to become a power creative? I don't even know if I'm there yet.
Okay.
Right? I honestly don't. And if I were to come up here and be like, look at me, I'm a power creative, I would look like a bigger douchebag. I was a drama nerd in high school, and the opportunity came to do interviews and things like that. And I was like, sure, I'll put myself out there because I had fun with it. And at one time I did a junket with what was, before it was X-Play, I can't remember what the show was called. And I did a little rant when I was younger, and Mark Green's like, oh, this kid's good, I can use this. And then I just love doing it. And it's hard to find a balance also of being on the road and doing all that, because if you happen to be at an Atari press event in Cabo in 2004, you got a message, hey, it's going great, guys, the game's showing great, everyone's loving it. And you have to keep in touch with the guys who are actually building everything back at the base.
Cool.
Love your office, by the way.
Do you have a particular source of inspiration you usually draw from, be it like books, movies, television?
Well, I got this. The question is inspiration sources. My problem right now is that I love too many things, so I'm not able to play all the games that I want to. So inspiration and travel is one of those things. One of our programmers did this like National Geographic tour where we literally went around the world in like 30 days, and he's posting photos from like the Taj Mahal, and then he's like, look, I'm with a panda, and like all this crazy stuff. That's valuable. That's grist for the mill. So my big advice is don't just play games, don't just read comic books, don't watch movies. Live your life. Have your heart broken once in a while.
Thanks.
So when the big publishers find this talk and they listen to it and they destroy the soul of it, what's the defense against the power creative being co-opted by the big studio?
Look, the question is in regards to the big studios hearing this talk and crushing it and putting flaming bags of poop on my front door or something. I don't know. I mean, for me, it's, if you can, by the way, it's something I didn't get to mention, get an agent. Have representation. If you are going to sign an employment agreement, find a lawyer and hire that lawyer. Don't just sign everything away. Pay attention to non-compete clauses. It can get really, really ugly out there if you're just a guy who's got a little bit of money versus the big dogs. I mean, it can get really scary. And remember, though, it's a business, and you have more leverage than you think if you're hardworking and talented.
So if you entered the game industry maybe instead of 17 years ago, you entered now, like 15, 17 years later, would you have decided to just go indie, or would you have still maybe tried to go work for a AAA studio? I mean, obviously, like Epic was producing shareware back then, but now it's huge. I mean, but the stuff coming out the indie guys, like it seems almost, it's, in terms of innovation, it's rivaling like everything coming out of almost every studio right now.
Yep, well, so I'm assuming you all heard that. He's talking about, if I were to get back in the business, what angle would I go from? What would I do? Would I do AAA? Would I do indie? My favorite part of this conference is the Independent Games Festival. The best Kinect game I've seen to date is Gunstringer, right? Like, that is absolutely perfect. The blending of building for the interface with a cool character. It's like Rango by way of puppets. So what would I do? Me personally, I love AAA. Like, it's this whole like weird Michael Bay thing I have going on, where it's like I have to bet the farm every time, and we have to spend millions of dollars. But that said, it's easier than ever to get in the industry. You can make an indie game and put it out there, and I love Super Meat Boy. I love Limbo, right? Like, I think that's amazing. Look at Notch killing it with Minecraft, right? That's great. So the indies can innovate more often than the AAA studios, because they can take the risks that the AAA studios often can't take because they're paralyzed.
Thank you.
Hi. You say that AAAs aren't dead, and I agree with you, but as the industry becomes increasingly unstable, do you feel like it will move more towards a model like Hollywood, where there's a lot more contractors, a lot more organization, kind of from a more global standpoint?
I think it's an excellent point about Hollywood and contractors, and as the industry gets unstable, I think you actually are seeing a lot of that right now. You'd be surprised at how many studios are making a killing outsourcing. There's so many studios that are brought in, like the joke I made about multiple studios that took to ship a product, where you have like, oh, we got these guys over in Shanghai, and then we got these guys in Seattle, and they're working on the multiplayer and all of that. It's kind of happening now. The problem is it's not Hollywood, whereas everybody's a complete freelancer who can sink or swim of their own volition. You're an employee, and I don't see this industry ever shifting towards that complete freelancer model anytime soon, which is what makes it extra important for people to know you as a person and eventually possibly a brand.
Do you see anything like the Screen Actors Guild, something akin to that, coming towards?
I don't know if Screen Actors Guild will come about. I mean, unions are one of those things that for every great thing they do, there's something that's kind of weird. I don't know if you've seen Waiting for Superman. I highly recommend it. It's an amazing film. There's an instance where the unions were really hurting the education system in DC. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to be the guy to rally the troops to form some sort of union or something like that. I'm just going to be the guy to say, don't be afraid to put yourself out there and occasionally be called the douchebag.
Thanks.
You've been waiting for a while.
You talked about being a creative person at heart. I wanted to know if you had a dream of being a director or a power creative. You're not going to go up to, Epic Studios, for example, and say, "Hi, I'd like to direct your next, IP." How do you get started? Do you start out as just saying, "I'm an artist," and then you kind of make your way through that? Or do you make it known right off the bat that you really would love to see one of your ideas come to life?
It's an excellent question that we get asked fairly often about ideas and coming off the blue, and just like, hey, I'm an artist who's getting started. Can I do my new thing? It was an interesting experiment talking to Tim Schafer and the folks at Double Fine when they decided, hey, let's just have an all-call, right, and see who has the best game idea, and we create these micro teams that kind of come up with crazy creative stuff. That's one possible solution. One thing that I do know, though, is it has to be an earned position if you're going to become a successful creative and eventually evolve into that power creative. You have to earn it over the course of many, many years and pay your dues, because you earn that respect, right? Like, on Gears 1, all the leads were sitting around, they're like, I don't know if I like what this guy does. And I'm like, we did Unreal and UT. I had to earn that respect over the course of Gears 1 and continue to reprove myself, and you still have to in many days. So my advice is just put your nose to the grindstone, make cool stuff, but also let your opinions be heard in playtest or any other venue.
Thanks.
Thanks.
I feel like I walked into the Indie Game Summit here, and that's a compliment. I'm wondering, what do you think the real reason is some publishers don't push their people out there, like you mentioned Red Dead Redemption, as an example?
Well, to be fair, and again, I said putting the people out there and why the publishers don't, that goes back to that whole doozer thing, right? Whereas as a publisher, as a person who's responsible for the finances, your employees often, in the worst case scenario, are these widgets along the machine. And if they start rising up and becoming a thing, then they get leverage. This is business 101. Oh, that person, everybody knows who he is, now he can go do his own thing. They want the quiet developer who just kind of sits there and he's like, okay, I get to work in video games, damn it. And what often happens to a lot of people is they get established. They fall in love, get married, have kids, and then they get roots in the town. And they never want to even consider moving that, right? Whereas you got to sometimes just take a leap and take a risk to advance your career. Don't jump around from company to company every 6 months, because I assure you, we look for that shit in the resumes. Spend there a couple of years there, ship a few games, and then look for another opportunity. We find a lot of people who come to Epic who are lifers at other studios that come and they're like, oh my God, we didn't know how great it is here, because they never thought to look up, and when they did, they found good stuff.
Do you think Rockstar could benefit their products by helping them getting the people working at it to express themselves publicly?
I think Rockstar kicks so much ass right now and has enough great brands that they don't have to. And that's, if that's working for them and the employees are happy, cool, man. But if I was a person working on one of those teams, I'd want to put myself out there a little more. Mr. Takahashi.
So if you look at how Infinity Ward clashed with Activision Blizzard, Is there some lesson there for power creatives? Those
Yeah,
guys.
don't say anything in email.
But those guys were power creatives, right? And they wound up.
Do you know what my gut
getting
says?
into
I think
such a-
Jason and Vince and those guys, they were building Medal of Honor, and they didn't like how it worked, so they went off and they built Call of Duty. And now this isn't working out, and God forbid all that stuff gets settled. I think they're going to go off and they're going to build something else awesome. Hopefully, be a little more careful this time with the legal parts of it.
Hi. How do you establish a brand and a product for your product while maintaining your personality when you go and meet a friend of at a barbecue and they're trying to think, oh, this is the power creative, but he's also a person. How do you maintain that balance of being a regular person when
Alcohol.
it's not? Yeah. Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, let's alternate real quick to this guy. Hi.
So you made it very clear that it's very important to engage fans long term, and you had showed pictures of people getting tattoos. That's how they're into your product. But are you ever concerned that there's a way to, when you design your games, to engage these people, that you could fall into sort of a persona that could come across as manipulative, and sort of specifically targeting people that are maybe too interested or too unhealthily into your games?
If you're not careful with how you build your game and how you build your brand, gamers are kids are smart, young people are smart, gamers are super smart, and they can smell bullshit from 10,000 miles away. And now that you have crowdsourcing on the internet, that bullshit will be weeded out very, very quickly. So if you're not sincere about what you're building and you don't actually believe in it, it's just some corporate person who slaps a logo on your thing, it's not going to work. It needs to come from the heart. How are we on time? We good? One more. I didn't even know you guys were over there. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I was going to ask, how much of Epic's success do you attribute to freely available tools like UDK and the great community behind it? And what's the next available tool that you think will drive innovation in the industry?
Chris Hecker actually asked me to not plug UDK.com, but since you brought it up, hey, this is a brilliant decision on behalf of Mark Rain and the guys who are responsible for engine licensing to release it for free. Because what happens is if you're at a university and you're like, okay, we've got to teach the kids how to do this, what are we going to use? Unreal Engine. We have a lot of people who license the engine, so there's this pre-trained workforce that comes in and reinforces the engine licensing business. It was very, very smart, but one of the reasons the engine has been successful is because it allows you to rapidly prototype. Pan for that gold faster. We just give you a better pan. And the sooner you can fail early and fail often and get to that point, the better game you'll have, and then have fiction that supports it, and you'll do well. So.
And what would you like to see? What tool would you like to see that you think will drive innovation in gaming?
I'd like to see better animation tools, like the Euphoria type stuff. Like I think, you look at character movement, how characters interact, animation is such a pain. That's just one pet peeve area of mine that I think we could all do better at.
Nice.
Cool. I think we're up for time, unfortunately, actually, so I'll be hovering outside a little bit. So thanks, guys. Thanks for coming out. Enjoy the show.